Well, welcome back everyone to SoulBack. Kyle here back with Tom and Ed. Another episode. And guys, I'm really excited about this one here. But before we do that, I got to check in with you guys, a wellness check. How are you guys doing this week?
I was waiting for Tom to go first. He's the one
Since
with
when
like
do I go first?
humans, because you got humans to take care of.
I'm holding up all right. I'm a little tired. Baby's been waking up at like 5:30. I'm
Oh
holding up
boy,
all right. Nothing can stop me from getting with my boys to break down R&B music.
love it.
We're live on YouTube now. Tom, you're looking after the comments, right?
I'm on Instagram looking after the comments.
Okay, you want to give a couple of shout outs? I think we have people coming in right now.
I see our boy Shaquille Perry in the house. I see Pretty Convincing in the house. Anyone who's listening to this after the fact that we recorded it live, feel free to join us Saturday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Join us in the conversation live. So if you hear us referencing stuff, we're just interacting with our family who joined us live for it.
Awesome. Well, let's do a quick recap of what we ended up with last week on our podcast. We were kind of talking about legends in R&B that, debuted in the 2000s, but I really want to take this to a grander and larger scale and talk about R&B legends in general. The thing, Ed, though, is that artists that came from like the early 90s, like the Jodeci's, the Mary J. Blige, the TLC's, I think by default they're legends because they were the trendsetters. So I really want to close in on that gap and talk about like maybe 1995 onwards, because those artists were influenced by the Jodeci's and the Marys and the TLC's. And I think that creates a better discussion. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. And before we get started on this conversation about legends, I just want to put it out there. I know we all have personal descriptions and thoughts about what a legend is. But for your boy, for me, what makes a legend is an artist that has a top shelf catalog of longevity and influence. You have to have several. I'm not going to put a number. Some people say, oh, you have to have 5 classics. Let's not do that. But you have to have a consistent catalog of greatness. You have to have a consistent, long-spanning career. Anybody that came out in 2016 ain't a legend. I'm sorry. But you also have to have influence. You have to be an artist that has influenced the genre. That's why we had this conversation in Soul and Stereo Cypher last week, and Lord knows it blew up. But one thing that you have to keep in mind is there is a younger set. It was like, oh, you think everybody from the 90s is a legend. No, it's easier to be a legend when you've had a 20 and 30-year career as opposed to someone who has had like a 6-year career. So you got to factor in longevity as well. So put all that in there. And that's why once we hit that sweet spot of 95 or so, that's a good time frame of measuring someone's career, because we've seen their highs, their lows, them come up, and how they've influenced the game.
Tom, go ahead.
It seemed like it was a lot easier to be a legend in the 90s because R&B was crossing over to pop, so it made it seem like people were much bigger than they are maybe now. So I feel like some of the 2000s artists might not be looked at in the same light, which makes it harder to classify them.
Yeah.
So for me, I'll just say my criteria is if you have at least 1 or 2 classics, if you've released at least 3 albums, and you've had some type of influence and maybe even contributed in some other areas, songwriting, producing, or something like that, that for me does it. You can't really have bad albums. Every album has to be at least solid. So that's kind of where I cut it off.
Another requirement of mine, I would say, is an artist has to go on a run. Like, it has to be a memorable certain number of years that the artist put out music. If you're out here putting out like 10 albums and no one remembers like 8 of them, I can't really say you're a legend. But the other thing I'll say is there is a lot of confusion on social media on R&B legend versus R&B veteran. I know you guys have seen that as well.
R&B old people.
Yes. I think we're talking about 3 different things. And again, this is your boy's personal opinion on this. You've got an R&B legend. An R&B legend falls into the category that we talked about earlier. They have a long career, very consistent. very memorable albums. To Tom's point, a lot easier for 90s artists because they had that top charting success, something that's a lot harder for artists to do now. So that's kind of a harder measurement. But to me, that's a legend, someone who has influenced R&B. Then you got an R&B veteran. That's someone who has been around a long time, someone who has been in the game a minute, but doesn't have the catalog, and they don't have the kind of well-known hits to back them up. That's a veteran, not so much a legend. We're going to see some of that clashing today because I bet I'm going to call a lot of people veterans that y'all consider legends. And then third is a musical icon. That, to me, supersedes all of them. And an icon, to me, also transcends genres. So the example I use on the Cypher, Keith Sweat, R&B legend. I don't think anybody here would argue that. But Prince is a musical icon.
I'm just kidding.
I'm coming for that mic. But a Prince is a musical icon because he transcends genres. It's influenced stuff across the board. Those are the three categories for me.
Guys, real quick, I got to acknowledge some of these comments on Instagram. Our boy Shaquille Perry wants to know if we consider Brandy a legend. I think that's obvious. I see Monica's name has come up a bunch of times. We'll probably get into that one later on.
Yep.
I see Lauryn Hill. I think we're all on the same page. I don't even consider Lauryn Hill really an R&B artist, although she did sing on her album. I mean, it kind of fluctuates between genres, in my opinion. We can maybe discuss that one.
Yeah.
And then there's a few other names, but I just want to acknowledge what I'm reading here.
Yeah, so I would say that off the top, I'm just going to mention a couple of names that we won't be talking about just because I think it's universally acknowledged that they're legends. Or maybe one of you guys can correct me, but Jodeci, Boyz II Men, New Edition, Keith Sweat, Mariah Carey, Mary J. Blige, Whitney Houston. Am I missing any right now?
Tony Braxton.
Tony Braxton,
yeah.
TLC. So
I mean,
those
I don't know if you guys
I think you hit them.
I don't know if SWV is debatable or not, but I would certainly consider them up there as well because I thought they were well, maybe that's a debatable one. We can debate that one.
Yeah, so that one I think is I personally think they are, but again, a debatable one. So let's just get those out of the way. And then Tom, you threw out a couple of names last week that I think are also, I think we can all agree on those ones, which were, I believe, Alicia Keys, Jill Scott.
So, let me give some context. Last week we had discussed if any artists from the 2000s who came out in the 2000s warranted being considered a legend yet. And I named Alicia Keys, Music Soul Child, and Jill Scott are three who would deserve consideration. I've since thought of some others who I'll bring up later. Yeah. But just so you guys know, that was where this discussion kind of birthed from, and we'll get into it.
And then before we even get started, someone wanted to ask the status of Jeremiah. He's actually out of ICU now. Apparently he's doing much better. So he's just recovering at the hospital, but I think he's going to make a quick, maybe not quick, but he will recover. Fingers crossed. But
these comments are going nuts. This is pretty funny.
I mean, it's a dangerous topic.
People are going to be pissed if we don't name Aaliyah. Ed, what happened in your cipher recently when some people were debating stuff like this?
Oh boy, it's the same thing that we're seeing here, and I think it was you that made this point. It was actually pretty on target. People take these really personally because when we talk about legends, to me, you know, I'm a reviewer. I always remove myself from all of this. Even when we joke about Keith or whatever, it's to me, I'm removed from whatever I'm looking at. But for a lot of people, these artists that we're talking about are huge parts of who they are and their music. So when you say that your favorite isn't a legend, it's like just like tearing down the credibility of all that you love in music. So people got all in their feelings. I mean, it just started with, I mentioned Alicia Keys. To me, I think between the three of us, we agree that she's a legend. I think that she's a legend. But lots of people had arguments that she was not. And it quickly turned into a food fight. So I'm sure we'll get a little bit of that today. But people take this really seriously because the artists that you have come to love and respect and grow up on might not be seen in the same light among other people. And that's why these conversations can be fun. But it's also the reason y'all just don't need to take it so seriously. Calm down and stop buying up all the toilet paper. I went to Target. I'm getting off Target. I went to Target and y'all buying up toilet paper again. Put your mask on.
Yeah.
Can I just make one suggestion, guys? Since there's literally hundreds of names we can discuss, let's try to make the commentary relatively quick so we can kind of rifle through some of these names and get to all of them and not have to leave people out.
All right. I'll start off with this one because someone mentioned SWV, Escape. A lot of people love Escape, and Vogue, another great female R&B group. Out of those three, which ones would you consider a legend or a legendary group? That's a tough one for me.
And here's also where it gets tricky because, again, we're talking about legendary as opposed to successful or veterans. Of the three, I think SWV is a shoe-in. I would call them legends. Escape, probably not. I love them. Probably not legends. Right. In Vogue, I'm on the fence. And I know that I'm not the biggest In Vogue fan. I think they're incredible. Of the three, they're the best vocalists of those three that we named by far. But to me, and they've had their big success, but it's really been hit and miss when you look at it overall. So legendary feels a little funny. I'm on the fence with them, but definite no for Escape, yes for SWV.
I personally feel like if In Vogue had continued after the Funky Divas album, I mean, EV3, I think a lot of people love as well, but I think they just needed like one or two more really solid body of works, and maybe that could have catapulted them to legendary status. I feel like their run, even though it was a magnificent run, a huge run, I just felt like it wasn't long enough. I felt like they needed one or two more to really be in the conversation.
I agree with that. And I know people will argue that they did have a long run. They were throughout the 90s and they were, but they had that huge run at the beginning. After that, it was a little hit or miss due to some situations, some out of their control, some in their control. I love them. I think that these are ones that we consider veterans. Wouldn't quite put them as legends.
Yeah. It's a shame, too, because they had some great music.
No question.
Destiny's Child. Forgot about them.
They had a significant impact.
They did,
In my opinion, I wouldn't necessarily call any of their albums classics, although you guys would debate me on that, but
didn't someone on here say that one of their albums was like the best of the 2000s era?
Wasn't that you?
Oh, it was, yeah.
Yes, it was. Like, what? It wasn't me.
All right, here's my thing. I cannot go on record as saying that Destiny's Child has made better music than SWV. I just can't. So that's kind of where the line is drawn for me. And I guess I kind of put them somewhere between In Vogue and SWV. Whether that makes them a legend or not, I don't know.
Well,
certainly they're celebrities.
Well, and that's my point, Tom, is like their biggest hits, like Jumpin', Jumpin', Bugaboo, Say My Name. Those, I wouldn't say those are traditional R&B records. They crossed over to pop, Bills as well. So I don't know. You can't really compare that to like Week or Rain. Yeah. It's different eras of R&B, but I don't know. Like they crossed over as well, so it's expected that they have poppier songs, and Survivor as well, another poppy song.
Ed, it looks like the comments are saying they are legends, FYI. I saw Damon pretty convincing Shaquille Perry agreeing that they are legends.
Ed?
I think they're weird because when I think back on them, from the roster changes to the sound changes, and again, like you can't really compare them to like an SWV because it's almost like a different generation almost, kind of moving away from that. When you look at the criteria, at least my criteria, it seems like they are. It just seems weird to call them that because even though I guess if you look at their run, they did have a long run, and they had a successful run. But the roster changes and the sound changes, it just is a weird inconsistency, not with success, but it's in their sound. So it almost feels like different Destiny's Child instead of, SWV is SWV. Escape is Escape. Destiny's Child feels like 3 or 4 different pieces that you're trying to put together. I would hesitantly call them legends, but I feel weird about it. I could definitely argue against that.
Well, and I don't want to harp on Destiny's Child for too long, but what would be their classic R&B songs that you would say came from their catalog? Like Say My Name for sure. You could argue
Which I don't even think is really an R&B song if we're really going to classify it.
The No 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 record maybe, because that was huge. But aside from those two, what would you consider to be their classic R&B record?
I mean, all of the poppy singles from the second album are the main ones. That one and The Bills. And like when you think of Destiny's Child, what songs come to mind? Those songs from that second album that really helped define kind of their sound going forward. And going into the next decade, they kind of helped that early 2000s R&B / pop sound. They were kind of I wouldn't say they pioneered it, but they were definitely at the forefront of that. So I can't take that away from them. I have no problem calling them that, but it does feel very strange.
Here's a comment I want to acknowledge from Ed's boy Damon, saying SWV aren't because they didn't have consistent hits after the first album. See, that's another thing, and maybe another topic for another time, but to me, if a song is a hit or not shouldn't classify if it's considered good. I mean, SWV has plenty of good songs on their second and third albums and their fourth and fifth. So just because they didn't blow up on radio, I'm not going to penalize them for that. I mean, there's other politics involved.
Yeah, but like on the flip side of that, I'm also not going to be like, if I say so-and-so is a legend and someone says, well, give me 7 songs, give me 7 classics. Like, again, it doesn't always fit like that because there's no checklist. If it was, it'd be pretty easy to just mark stuff off. So it's subjective, y'all. It depends on what your list is and what your qualifications are.
Yeah, see, like Pretty Convincing mentioned Bootylicious. Someone else mentioned Independent Woman. Like big hits, but I wouldn't say classic R&B songs.
Independent Woman was kind of big for us today. I'll give them that one. Okay. Maybe not Bootylicious, but that one I'll give them.
All right, let's skip on ahead here. I've got a cast of male R&B groups here. Let's touch on these. Tom, you'll love this one. This is your era right here.
Oh.
And we talk about this like every other week. Jagged Edge, 112, Dru Hill, Next, Blackstreet. Let's go with those 5. And Silk. We got to mention Silk.
All 6 legends.
Really?
Next question.
Calm down. Calm down.
Next question.
Let's see. The only ones. Sorry, Tom, I can't give it to Next.
Well, Next, I mean, RL, is my friend. But I mean, even he would probably admit their second and third albums were a bit inconsistent. And obviously, they haven't released anything past then as far as albums. So it'll be tough to give them that. The third album was rushed a bit with the label change. But
their debut was really good.
I love their debut album.
Yeah, their debut was really good.
I love RL's contributions to songwriting outside of Next. So, I mean, I can't say they're a legend, but, it is what it is.
Now, yeah, they had their first one is the one that counts as their claim to fame. I can't do Next. I'm trying to be an unbiased reviewer. Trying to be unbiased, but
well, if you want my real quick, Dru Hill is not either, really, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We didn't get to Dru. Dru is another conversation. Dru and Silk are kind of on that line for me. They have great albums and great. Well, first let's take Silk because Dru definitely had more mainstream success. I feel like Silk has always been runner up, and I hate it because my boys are so great.
Yeah,
I mean their third and first albums alone should put them up there, but they just didn't get the mainstream appeal when we talk about influence and kind of helping to shape a genre. So I don't know if I can call them legends. Veterans, yes. Legends, I don't know.
I think it's an important time. I
probably prefer them out of everyone.
I think it's an important time for me to reiterate the fact that just because someone's not a legend, we're debating the best of the best here. So, I mean, it's not like we're saying Profile or Next. This is like some of the best we had. Yeah. So everyone here is among the best of their generation.
And that's why they're in this conversation. I'm with you, Ed. Dru Hill, I don't think is legendary status. I will say that Sisqó was probably one of the most underrated R&B artists of our time, talent-wise, and just the material that he put out. But just with the breakup and their third album not being as good as the first two, and then the Independence Day album, I didn't really like that. It's tough for me to say legendary. Again, another one that
Sorry, pretty convincing. That was no offense to Profile. We love Profile.
Yeah.
Oh no beef to Profile, but to
amazing first album too.
Everybody's a legend. What's the point?
Yeah. Blackstreet. To me, these guys are legends.
Blackstreet.
Their first album, a lot of people call that a classic. I really love their second album. But
they didn't have the run, though, Kyle. They didn't have the run, did they?
That's true.
That's what I was going to say. They have the classic. And again, they have classic songs. No Diggity is a classic. Nobody would argue that. They have great performances. My man Dave, shout out.
Mm-hmm.
But the run is what's taking me away from them.
Yeah. Okay. What about Guy? I mean, I think Guy by default, because they sort of like were one of the pioneers of New Jack Swing.
You have to.
Well, yeah. But see, this is where I don't want to get too granular, but this is where it gets for me. I would call Guy New Jack Swing legends because they define that genre. Overall, though, it's kind of like when people are calling trap gods and trap legends, but rap legends, so in that kind of vein, I feel like that.
Okay, so we're down to 112 and Jagged Edge. I would say both are.
I think we're unanimous on that.
I think they both are legends.
Yeah, I can't argue either because they had long runs. They had incredible albums. They've had their ups and downs, but even considering how they helped I think we forget how they just for the end of the 90s into the 2000s were just up at the top as far as R&B groups. These are among the last R&B groups ever. So got to give props for that.
Yeah. Because when you think about it, Jagged Edge, 10 albums in, and even though we don't like every single one, they had that run that I was talking about from J Heartbreak, Jagged Little Thrill, and Hard. Like, they were on top of their game, so I gotta give it to them. Someone is asking us who we want to see Jodeci face in the versus battle. Well, I would like to see Devontae actually show up to that, but
oh my god,
I think Boyz II Men is like the obvious choice here, right?
Boyz II Men is the only choice. That's the only one who could go hit for hit.
Yeah.
And again, these were the two groups because I was around that people compared at the time. So
well,
it's them or no one.
Ed, New Jack Swing, which funny enough, he just mentioned that guys should be legends because they influenced a whole era of music. Plus, R. Kelly took Aaron Hall's style for a bit. This is true.
Oh, he definitely did. No question.
So when we're talking about influence, like, that's something.
Yeah, it influenced that genre. I don't feel like outside of that genre, though. And again, we are not shading Guy. I love me some Guy.
Yeah.
And I love me some Aaron Hall, as crazy as he. But when we talk about influencing the entire genre or just kind of a subset of the genre, that's why Guy, to me, I would put Blackstreet over Guy for sure. So if we aren't doing Blackstreet, definitely not doing Guy. Teddy, though, another question. We can put it. That's icon status when you want to get there. That's another comment.
All right. Let's get into some males here. And this is in no particular order. We might go back to groups. We might go to the females. I'm just reading the comments as we go along here. Let's go with this group of people. We have Genuine, Usher. We have Tevin Campbell, Brandy, Monica, and Aaliyah. And I guess Maya, we should throw her in that group too because she's random
crap.
Yeah,
it's the younger people from that era.
This player, you put the iPod on shuffle. I was like, what is this?
I thought this was 95. When did Tevin Campbell come out? I thought this was 95.
Yeah, but Tevin Campbell was like 10 in 92. So by 95, he's like 14.
God. He was not 10. Anyway, proceed.
Let's pick through. Usher, I think we're unanimous on.
Yeah.
Although he's trying to sabotage his own career with some of this music. That's another debate.
Calm down. I like the new single.
He's coming back.
No. I meant the last album.
Oh, yes. Don't get me on A.
Time out. I got a question for you guys. Is it possible at this point for any veteran artist who might not be a legend to become a legend if they put out a 5-star project, or is that not possible?
It's hard because of the gap. You know, we talked about consistency. So it's kind of hard that if you like been down in the gutter for 10 years, then pop up with a 5-star project. It's kind of like,
I don't
you have to
know.
drop a 5-star project and then
I don't
build
know,
upon that.
Tom. If a veteran drops a 5-star project in 2020, when all we've been getting is like 3s,
Oh,
I think we might have to put him in legendary status.
I mean,
Yeah.
Come on.
maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't
Anyways,
given a 4.5-star project this year. I am very sad. 2020 is disappointing.
okay. Well, let's focus here. Usher, I think, unanimous legend.
Yep.
Genuine. Pony, one of the biggest R&B songs of all time. A legendary song for sure. A classic song. Differences.
Go ahead, Tom.
Differences, I would say, is a classic R&B song.
This one, no, yeah, I give that one.
Yeah.
But
This is a tough one.
no, I'm leaning towards no, but he just didn't have the run. Like the albums weren't consistent once the Life came out.
Tom hit it on it. That's the issue. He's got legendary songs, actual classic songs, no question. He does not have the legendary consistency from it.
I just feel like if Genuine's later albums were, because I didn't think they were bad, but if we had 1 or 2 good to great albums later on, I think we might be able to slide G in there.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
some
I
of those
agree with
later
that.
albums, like Elgin, I don't remember anything off that one. Back to the Basics, I don't really remember that album either. And The
I don't
Senior,
remember
to me,
anything after Back to the Basics, to be honest. And I just ranked all of them a few months ago.
so tough one. Tevin Campbell, who at one
No.
point,
No.
Tom, let me give you some context. He was on The
Oh.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He
Not
was
even
at one point, he was like the biggest child star. But had 2 albums and then just didn't really work out for him, eh?
That's the problem. Look, I love Tevin, and I think that I'm glad to see this little Tevin resurgence that we're seeing on Twitter and social media the past few years, because y'all don't understand. If you weren't around in the early 90s, we thought Tevin was going to be that dude. But he didn't have the consistency, he didn't have the longevity. But his run was big when he had it, not legendary.
I'm reading these comments still on Instagram. I like this comment from Daytime. Genuine was right up there, but I'd say he's a veteran because he isn't listed as an inspiration the way, say, Usher is. Now,
Correct.
remember, guys, Usher and Genuine were pretty much neck and neck in the late '90s, early 2000s, and then Usher kind of blew him away with 8701 and Confessions, and Genuine really didn't come out with albums to match those or even close. So
Yeah.
kind of where they separated.
That's
Comments
how it
on
is
point.
sometimes.
I agree.
I mean, that's what separates the good from the great. It's just one of those albums, 2 of those albums.
Wow. This comment from Shaquille Perry. I'm sorry, guys. These comments are off the hook. If Genuine isn't, then Donnell Jones isn't either. I think we'll get there at some point, Kyle, right?
We'll get there.
We'll get to Darnell. Darnell will be
Darnell.
We'll get there.
All right. I think those were the males. Let's go to the females here. This can get kind of I think everyone needs to like duck for cover because you're gonna get a couple of tomatoes thrown at you.
Oh, it's gonna get weird.
Brandy, Aaliyah, Monica, and Maya.
I'll
start off.
Let's go on and.
Can I start off?
You start.
One of these things is not like the other.
Oh my God.
Man, I would hate.
I'm just saying.
I would hate
thought I
to
was
be
the
Aaliyah.
mean
I'm
one.
just kidding. All right. I would say Brandy is a legend.
Oh, of
Yes,
course you
that's-
take the easy one.
Wow. I mean that B7 album almost took her off legendary status, but we're gonna pretend that didn't happen.
Oof.
I would say she's a legend because of her influence. You see it clearly on social media. Sometimes you see it too much from these stands, but every new R&B singer tries to do the Brandy runs. So I'm going to say Brandy is a legend. She has the classic albums, she has the run, and she has the longevity.
Agree.
You guys can pick the hard ones and fight about it.
Oh my God.
Well, we all agree. I'll give the Maya commentary. And we love Maya. I mean, she, as an independent artist, has been on a great run, in my opinion, and is releasing great music. all on her own, and I love what she's doing. I don't think she's a legend, but it's easy to say that. She's had a great run though. I don't think she has the classic albums you need for that. Her first couple albums are really good though.
Mm-hmm.
But I just can't go there. I don't want to hear Ed's opinion on Monica.
Well,
I'll
my
let him
opinion
you
on
take
Monica
Aaliyah.
is- I will gladly be the bad guy of the podcast, as I always
Oh
am.
man.
I'll take two. I'll take the other two, and then y'all can weigh in. So Monica and Aaliyah, because I agree with y'all on both Brandy and Maya. Okay, Monica. Tom, you remember when we used to do the R&B Hall of Fame?
Oh,
and the
I knew it was
legendary arguments.
Please don't bring
I'm
that
having
up.
flashbacks.
Yes. I love Monica more so than Brandy, to be honest, when it comes to material. But she's so, no pun intended, borderline compared to Brandy.
Borderline.
Because
Oh,
we're talking about influence. And to me, that's what hurts Monica. Even though she has some great albums on that resume, she's real close to me, but I can't commit. Aaliyah is weird because, unfortunately, with every artist that we've seen pass away, from Aaliyah these days to Nipsey Hussle and Mac Miller, who apparently are the greatest rappers of all time, that's what Twitter has told me, it's hard to compare their careers objectively because when we lose them, we put them up on a pedestal. Aaliyah is very influential, has great albums. She feels like a legend, but I don't know if that is just because her passing has elevated her. And if she was still here, had those 3 albums and just decided to like stop her career, would we be calling her legendary? Maybe not, even though she's still influential. I'm really on the fence with her.
You know what?
Those, but Monica's probably a no.
No, I'm going to say yes for Monica. I don't remember what I said in the R&B Hall of Fame, honestly. I'm going to say yes for the fact that when we have that conversation about whether, if you drop an album later on that's amazing, does it help elevate your career, from what's already been done? And I would say that Still Standing album, although I don't think that's like a 5-star classic by any stretch.
Nope.
I think she was able to build more songs in her catalog that elevate her to legendary status. Like Everything to me, that is an incredible song. And that song, as well as Love All Over Me, like I think to me, you can argue that she's a legend based on those 2 songs, as well as everything that she's done prior. So I'm gonna give the nod to Monica. Like one of us has to come for Monica and help her out, because I personally want to be her photographer.
oh no! Once
you
again,
sharpen up your skills. That guy's good. He's
Once
taking
again,
photos and everything.
We're doing the best of the best here. So if someone doesn't make it, it doesn't mean they're still not among the best ever.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely not.
I'm reading the comments. Everyone seems to agree that Aaliyah and Monica are legends. I'll just remind everyone that, number one, just because someone's famous for a long time, it doesn't mean they're a legend. We're looking at it objectively from their body of work, their influence, etc. You laid it out earlier. Aaliyah, I just love to share this fact, and I'm a huge Aaliyah fan. But her 3rd album, before she passed, unfortunately, was not moving. It was not going anywhere.
It was
and then
not.
she died, and it blew. People always forget this.
Yeah.
So who even knows if she didn't pass at that time? And I hate to even have to say this because I feel horrendously that she's gone. But who knows what would have happened with her career? Her 4th album might have been trash, and then we would have said she's not a legend. So it's a really tough one to say.
Third album
I'll
is good, though. I'm going to add that.
Yeah, the 3rd album is great, and when it comes to it, it's extremely influential in the R&B that we've seen today. But to Tom's point about that, I love We Need a Resolution. That joint did not pop off, to Tom's point. And I remember getting the album, and we talked about this when we did our 2001 podcast, and I listened to Rock the Boat, and I was like, why wasn't this the single? This is way better than that. So, that album does not – we remember it being this – incredible album that was huge. It didn't take off until after she was gone, unfortunately. That's why it's real hard to measure Aaliyah. You can say that she became a legend after we lost her. I can take that. But she gets that asterisk beside her, unfortunately.
All right, I'm gonna name a couple more people here. I don't think we're in trouble yet, so that's good. Someone wanted us to mention Shanice. Someone wanted us to mention Karen White, and of course, Faith Evans.
I thought Faith Evans was a unanimous among us, right?
Yeah, I forgot to
No,
mention
we're
her
not
early
arguing
on.
Faye.
Yeah.
Legendary, catalog, consistency, vocal performances.
The other two you mentioned, I don't think just have the catalog or body of work to really put in that category.
Yeah.
No, veterans, not legends.
Tracy Spencer as well, great artist, but I don't think they have the full package.
Yeah.
And
But to me,
longevity. Yeah.
up though. Is Tamia supposed to be a unanimous, or are we debating that one?
I love Tamia.
I want to say unanimously yes.
Well,
but
okay. For me, Tamia is in the same boat as Tyrese. So if you say Tyrese is a legend, I'll give you Tamia.
Where did Tyrese come from? What?
To me, those are two artists that have consistently put out solid music throughout the years, but they never reached the heights.
Player. Tamia's discography is murdering Tyrese's. What are you talking about there?
I don't know. That Black Rose album, guys. Classic.
I mean, okay, but it's still getting murdered. And I like Black Rose. And his debut. I love both of those.
So Tamia? Tom?
Tamia. I have to say veteran because she just doesn't have the influence. When you look at, can you name not even someone off the street, like just, and not anyone here on this, because if you're listening to this podcast, you're an R&B fanatic, you know your stuff, but just kind of middle of the road R&B fan. How many Tamia songs can they name? And Tamia is one of my favorite artists, so I'm not shading her at all. It kills me to say this, but she just doesn't have the recognizable hits as the legends on our list do. I just don't think it's there.
Okay, I'm gonna give you. Go ahead.
I can't argue with that. I can't argue.
All right. Well, we're gonna add in a couple more names to the battle.
We got some Tamia haters in the comments in here. It's cool.
Who ain't no Tamia?
An Angel in Disguise. You mentioned Aaliyah's album not moving. You know, it didn't move as well as her previous album. That's just a fact. Like, it was fading from the charts before she passed. So, I mean, these are just facts. I'm not making things up.
As
Wikipedia right there, player. You can go see where it debuted. It did not debut #1 triple platinum. It blew up after she passed away. I was in Target. I saw the shelves get cleared.
All right. I'm going to name a couple more people here. Joe, Brian McKnight, Avant, Darnell Jones.
Darnell.
And we talked about Tank last week, so we don't need to talk about him again, but I'm missing one here. Kem. Who just dropped his new album, which is amazing, by the way. Go check out Kem's album.
Yes, it's very good.
But of those people, I think Joe is an R&B legend and also one of the most underrated.
Joe, I will just say, is the most popular artist among our readers on our site. That's got to count for something. And it could probably be debated, but to me, he's just taken his career to new heights in the past 5 or so years, just the way he's toured. He's put out solid albums. And I mean, he's the quintessential R&B artist of the 90s for male singers. So I got to go yes. It's debatable, though, because I don't think every one of his albums are classics or anything like that. To me, they're all solid at least, though.
Joe, to me, is kind of what we said about Genuine, except bump everything up a level. Because he has I bet no one in this chat could name all 12 or 13 of his albums. He just has so many. He has an incredible, extensive catalog. But really, when we talk about mainstream big stuff, he's remembered for 2. Like, he's got that late 90s, early 2000s run that he's really, really known for. And no shade there. But I don't know. There's just something kind of missing for me. he's got the consistency, but when it comes to just well-known awareness, he's borderline. He's borderline. I won't argue against him and say, oh, it's ridiculous for you to say that, but he doesn't check all the boxes for me. So he on the fence. Joe's sitting on my fence.
Well, what about Brian McKnight? Because early Brian McKnight, I'm talking about like the first 3 or 4 albums, especially at that Back at One album and the Anytime album, like he was huge.
I think, guys, I think you got to look at the fact that these are 2 names who you might not say offhand are legends, but we're here 25 years after they first came out, and they're still doing it at a high level and still making quality music. That's got to count.
I would give Brian McKnight the slight edge over Joe in that category because his 90s run was so huge. It's Christmas time, y'all playing Let It Snow. So like he definitely has the awareness that's there. And I feel like that, like Joe is like almost there, but doesn't quite do it for me. Brian McKnight just gets over the fence. He's another one that you can argue either way. I think that 90s run was just pretty undeniable. And he did maintain consistency across the board. I'll give it to him. Slight, but I'll give it to him.
Yeah. Listen, if my mom knows who Brian McKnight is, that's something.
Your mom put you on the Mariah. She knows what's up.
That is true.
But see, that's the pop crossover effect that's getting people jaded. Just because he crossed over with a huge single and Joe didn't, like, I don't give him more credit for that.
But that's the difference. I mean, Mark Morrison crossed over, but like we aren't arguing about
legend.
Yo, that song is amazing though.
This Mark Morrison. Can anybody name one song besides that Mark Morrison has done? No.
Listen, guys, all I know is the comments are still talking about Aaliyah. So.
Of course they are. Did you just get here?
All right, I've got a couple more names here. Apparently Tyrese is a no for you guys, so we're gonna skip that.
He's a no.
Donnell Jones, Avant, Carl Thomas, and someone said Tony Rich.
Tony Rich?
It's in the comments.
I'm gonna challenge one of our commenters, Angel in Disguise, and shout out to you. I know you're one of our biggest supporters, but I want you to go back and listen to every single Joe album and every single Brian McKnight album. Because if you're going to challenge me that they're still releasing music and it just means they're veterans, they're still releasing good music. And I'm pretty sure you haven't listened to all their albums. So there's my homework for you.
All right. Donnell, because he has an amazing second album.
He has an amazing second album that everybody remembers.
His debut was really good too.
Yeah.
It is. His debut is like Joe's debut. One of those debuts that no one talks about. That's great. But Donnell, nope. And I love you, but nope. Not a legend.
Yeah. If we're not going to put Joe in, this feels like deja vu of this Hall of Fame.
Here we go.
Oh, boy.
If this person isn't in, then none of these people are in.
Listen, I love Donnell Jones. That's our boy. But if Monica didn't get in, then nobody's in.
Oh. Why do I sit here every week?
No. In all seriousness, Donnell, love that guy. That's our boy, but has great albums. I mean, I could probably be convinced his first isn't widely recognized as a classic, but I love that album. And the second obviously is. So. And
he also wrote for other artists.
Yeah, that's a tough one too.
And if Donnell's not in, I can't really put Avant or Carl Thomas in, unfortunately.
No.
But I love both.
No, can't do it. Shout out my boy Henry. He brought up Avant in the cipher for that, but nope, Avant can't make it.
And Tony Rich, I think, is a unanimous no, unfortunately.
Nope.
We didn't touch on Kem, but
we didn't touch on Kem.
Kem is a tough one. I wouldn't call him a legend, but the guy has put together quite a career for himself.
He's on track. I think he's on track for it.
I think with Kem, what we kind of miss is that Kem kind of misses kind of the demographic for a lot of our listeners, and they don't realize if you look, that dude comes out with a #1 album like every time. Stuff is always selling, always sell out tours. He is extremely successful, and he does have at least one very, very recognizable song that we all know. So he's on. I agree with Tom. Give him a little bit more time, and I would have no problem putting him in there.
Kyle, I made a list of names who I thought are not legends because they're more recent, and they have more work to do. Do you mind if at some point I just throw them out there?
Yeah, let me give you a couple more names here, and then we'll do that. I think we're almost hitting an hour too, which is crazy.
Oh yeah,
there's too many names. But I can't go this podcast without mentioning these people right here. It might be obvious to some people, it might not. But Tom's favorite artist, D'Angelo.
Oh, that's a whole podcast episode discussion right there.
Yes, Lord.
Maxwell, Erykah Badu, and Lauryn Hill.
It's too much to discuss for this podcast. The only thing I'm going to say is I could see the argument for any of those being a legend. And I'm not going to debate it any further.
Well, very quickly, I think Maxwell and Badu get the thumbs up from me. D'Angelo is another.
Here we go.
Ed, yes.
Oh man, you can't.
Love it, Ed. Yes.
I
knew you were on my side.
But I know that when it comes to consistency, that's where he gets weird. But he definitely has the influence, and he definitely has the discography. Depending on who you ask.
No. I'm still working on that Voodoo album, guys. I'm still digging into that Voodoo album. Don't worry.
Oh my! You've been digging for 20 years. The 20-year anniversary of your first dig. Just go on and give it up.
Tom, I'll buy you some beats. I'll buy you some beats by Dre, and you can maybe it'll sound better on that.
I cannot even be convinced that D'Angelo's third album is even relatively decent. I just cannot. I'm sorry.
Have you even heard his third album?
Yes. It sounds like a garbled mess of random thoughts.
Oh God. The third album I like the third album better than Voodoo.
Wow. All right.
And there we have it. Tom, do you want to go through your list here?
These are names who were like 2000 and forward when they came out, who all have a case for themselves, but I think they all have more work to do. I'm just going to run through them real quick. If you guys want to touch on any of them, that's fine. Raheem DeVaughn, Chrisette Michele, Eric Roberson, Dwele, Ledisi, Jaheim, Neo, Trey Songz, John Legend, and Bilal. Now, they all have totally different resumes, obviously.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying any of those are legends at this moment. However, I think a case could be made for the future that each of those could be on their way at some point. I mean, Ed, did any of those stand out to you?
I think that of the names that you mentioned, you said a bunch, so I'm probably forgetting, so somebody's going to scream bloody murder. But I think Ledisi has a very good shot. I feel like John Legend should, but I think y'all gets too stuck on his last name. Like, we ain't talking about Legend Family Reunion. We're talking about legendary output. He's one of those people that's, Tom mentioned earlier, like someone that's a celebrity. So he feels like he should, but I don't know, the receipts ain't matching up for me, dog, on that one. Trey is another one that feels like he should. A little too up and down. I think of the ones you named, I think Ledisi has the best. Like, if she continues this run, she'll be there.
Well, I'll say Neo, who I already think is a legend if you take his songwriting into consideration. Fantasia, someone said Fantasia. Again, I think she's a phenomenal performer, but I don't know if enough people know her music for us to really call her an R&B legend. But here are two names that I'm going to throw at that I think they have a lot more work to do. And I don't know if they'll ever get to that status just because of the state of the industry now. Miguel and Jasmine Sullivan. They're still doing their thing. So, I mean, and they have years before we can really classify them as whatever we'll classify them as. But do you guys agree that the window hasn't fully closed on those two?
The problem to me, real quick. Miguel, when you look at it, he's had great music. It's really eclectic, though. I don't really consider him R&B. Sure. But I will say he hasn't really influenced the generation after him. Unfortunately, the generation that came after him in R&B was influenced by hip-hop. So it's almost like it's hard to say the impact he's had on the genre. But obviously, for that one moment when Adorn came out, people thought he was saving the genre. Obviously, that didn't happen.
And see, that's what makes me so frustrated about this newest crop of artists. Because a Jasmine, a Miguel,
Mm-hmm.
my boy Damon mentioned Janelle Monáe and a few others in the chat. Like, these are artists that should be the ones that we are propping up, but they aren't influencing younger artists because younger artists are being influenced by everything else but R&B. It's such a weird place to be in. So these artists that came out and came of age in the 2010s, we probably will have to change the metrics that we look at what makes them legendary, because we can't use the same metrics. It's just not fair. Like, they aren't going to get mainstream placement. They aren't going to be influencing 1,000 artists. I mean, the way the streaming's set up, it's not like they're going to be pushing a bunch of numbers. It's very weird and kind of unfair. I love all these artists that you mentioned, but we'll see where they stand.
Yeah, and someone else just mentioned her. Another one. She hasn't even dropped her debut album yet, so I can't really.
Weird.
Yeah, that's a little too early right now, but for her. But someone said, "Can you guys do an episode about your top 10 R&B albums of all time?" That we might be able to do. Someone asked about Omarion, Craig David, and Amory. I think we already mentioned our 2000s artists that we think, and they didn't quite make the cut. I actually love all three, but unfortunately not those three. But I'm going to give you guys this one before we get out of here, because I think we're almost at an hour, and I forgot about these guys. Tony, as well as Mint Condition.
Well, I mean, that's 80s, right, Ed?
Early 90s, yeah.
Well, so, I mean, if we want to go back that far,
because I see the argument that they are, but then I also see a lot of people say that they aren't.
It just feels like, because again, we confuse or conflate legendary with veterans, and if you are a hit maker from the 90s, you're automatically a legend, and that's kind of not how it matches up for me. I love Mint Condition. I love Tony.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're shoe-in legends though. Tony feels closer. They feel closer. I'll just leave it at that.
This is an interesting conversation, guys. You know why? Because when I look on Twitter and places, when you see these artists being named, all you see is comments saying, "Oh, legend," and there's no one to check them on it. I mean, we're keeping it all the way real here from an unbiased perspective, and I feel like no one really does this.
Yeah.
Well, that's why the world sucks now, because there's, and I know gatekeepers are bad. We don't want to be gatekeepers, because gatekeepers exclude conversations from coming in. That's not what we're doing. You can bring the conversation in, but needs to be some quality control before you drag your muddy feet through my door. That's all I'm saying.
Raphael Sadiq, definitely a legend here. Someone asked
no one mentioned
about
my boy John B, but we'll debate that one.
And we love John B.
But no, I mean, there's a lot of names we haven't brought up. We just simply don't have enough time. So if we didn't mention someone, it's not personal. We have 1 hour to do this show. We'll get to it another time.
Yeah. I will end off with these two names. NERD. Are they NRB?
Where
legend?
are you reading this from?
What?
Oh, this is from my own notes. It's my textbook.
Oh, what?
Clearly, it's from your own notes.
You could have at least blamed someone on YouTube for that, but no.
No, but really, the name that I wanted to bring up, and Tom, you forgot her when we talked about our 2000s artists. Ed, is Rihanna an R&B legend?
Oh God, I'm out.
Yeah, I was like, "Where's the plug? I'm pulling it. Where's the Naughty by Nature bear, Tom? You're gonna replace him with me over here." Yes, him. That will be for the rest of this podcast. The bats for Kyle. No, Rihanna is stop making Rihanna. When has Rihanna ever said, y'all, that she was making R&B songs? Tell me.
That's true.
I have never seen that. But
well, what about
want to lump her in every time?
Well, what about Justin Timberlake?
Oh,
I think
I'm up here.
JT and He Should Not Be Named will be another podcast for another time.
Wait, what about that guy who made a New Jack Swing album a few years ago? What was that guy's name?
Oh, that guy that Ed put in his top 50 greatest R&B artists of all time?
Yes.
Oh, my gosh. I literally didn't know who you were talking about at first.
I totally forgot I can't even think of his name right now.
He had that.
Of course you can't. You don't have any good albums on your discography. I'll go over there. put it on your playlist for you.
He had that grenade song. That's all I remember.
What is his name again?
He had the grenade song.
Oh,
He had the Grenade song.
I know.
That wasn't even on that album.
Frank Ocean, right?
No, not Frank Ocean. Although, before we get out of here, I think we're almost running out of. What time are we at here, Tom?
We got 5 minutes before I cut both of you jokers off.
I think
that's
there's
impressive.
actually 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, just remember that one day people will consider The Weeknd an R&B legend. So,
Oh,
and we won't be alive for that podcast by then.
I know.
think
Actually, it's already happening on my timeline. I have been trolled for 24 hours because I said he had the most overrated album of 2020, and the Weeknd stands have been out for blood.
Yeah. Someone's in here talking about Sam Salter. I love Sam Salter. Shout out to Sam Salter.
Sam Salter's name is coming up in legend discussion.
I love Sam Salter.
We got to bring up Horace Brown then. Someone once told me he was a legend.
What, Soul Child's in the chat?
Yeah, shout out.
All right, let's focus here. I think we're done for the day. I think this is we've gone too far.
Here we
we're
go.
going.
Here's the best comment
Went
I
too
read the
far
whole
with the
time.
Bruno slander.
This
Yeah.
comment right here from Melly Jean. Everyone you mentioned are still part of the conversation. So at least we didn't start naming some weirdo artists that don't even deserve to be brought up.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
We did good. All right. Well, I think we're out of here for this week. Maybe we'll continue this conversation next week. There's a couple of names that we forgot. Montrez said, "Have a good night, guys." Montrez, you have a good night as well. Thanks for tuning in, and thank everyone else for tuning in. We're gonna call it a week, but Ed, before we get out of here, what's going on with SoulInStereo.com?
Got that heat for you. So we've got a new album ranking of Lecrae, his whole discography from front to back, as well as a playlist of all the members of the Soul and Stereo Cypher. You didn't know it, but a lot of Soul and Stereo readers are very talented artists, producers, singers, rappers, all of that stuff. I got a playlist so you can hear all on our fans right here. So check out SoulAndStereo.com to hear what our listeners are doing. Y'all some talented brothers and sisters.
And I've seen Jaguar Wright in the comments more than once already.
Where are you reading this stuff?
On YouTube. YouTube is where
love
it's at. You got to go on YouTube, guys. But Tom, what's going on with IGotSoul.com?
We've just been doing some interviews recently. Check those out. You're working on a special feature that should be out in a few weeks, I guess, or a few
Fingers
months.
crossed. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're just keeping it going. It's been a little slow for new music, so we're just trying to be creative. Next week we'll have Angel in Disguise on the show.
We will.
I gave them homework. I gave them a lot of music to listen to so they can share their findings with us. I'm just kidding, Angel in Disguise. You know it's all love. We appreciate you.
Melly Jean said, next time, can you do the R&B top 10 R&B bands? That might be fun too.
Can I name top 10 bands from R&B?
Yeah, you can.
Band. Not group, but band.
Well, then it's just like Mint Condition and Tony. So there's that. So yeah, I'm working on a feature, guys, but we'll be back next week with another great podcast. And for everyone that's listening, for those that are watching this and want to re-listen to it, it's actually going to be on YouTube and Spotify. So just search up SoulBack R&B Podcast. And for anyone that's just listening to it on those platforms, come join us on YouTube and Instagram and come participate and chime in, because we love that as well. But we'll be back soon, and we will actually get to our 90s discussion at some point. We just needed a little break because I got to do my research on 1991, guys. But
good luck with that, Kyle.
We will get there soon.
Big Tex is ready to replace you, Kyle. Big Tex from our YouTube comments.
Yeah, that guy he wants to get rid of either of us. I don't know why, but
could be Ed and Big Tex and Barry Bars.
Yep.
What a trio.
So I think that's it for this week. We'll be back next week with another great discussion. You guys stay safe as always. Mask up. Don't hoard toilet paper. And I think we should set up like a Cash App or something. Can we do that? A GoFundMe? Is that?
Yes, GoFund R&B. Let's do that.
Let's do that. All right, we're out of here. You guys take care, and we'll see you next week.